Welcome to the Orchid Advisors Compliance Training Series, Export Controls. Introduction to the ITAR, Part 1. Any company that manufactures or deals internationally in firearms must comply with a set of federal regulations known as the International Traffic in Arms Regulations, or ITAR. The registration and licensing requirements of these regulations permeate virtually every aspect of a company's international operations and are a factor for manufacturers, even those who do not have any business overseas. We offer this video series to help companies understand the structure of the ITAR, identify key registration and licensing triggers, and how to avoid common compliance violations. In this first video, we will introduce the ITAR and its implementing agency, and its relation to other regulations that may affect a firearm company's operations. The governing law and authority. The ITAR is a set of regulations the State Department administers pursuant to authority derived from the Arms Export Control Act, or AECA, which Congress passed in 1976 as a way to safeguard the national security and foreign policy interests of the United States. The Act gives the President authority to control exports, imports, and brokering of so-called defense articles and defense services. The President has divided this authority among different agencies. The authority to control exports, temporary imports, and brokering of defense articles and defense services is delegated to the Department of State, which implements rules and policy requirements through the ITAR. The State Department offices primarily in charge of administering the ITAR make up the Directorate of Defense Trade Controls, or DDTC. DDTC is in the Bureau of Political Military Affairs and has three main offices: licensing, compliance, and policy. Permanent imports of defense articles is controlled by the Department of Justice's Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, or ATF. The International Traffic in Arms Regulations. The ITAR are found in Title 22 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Chapter 1, Subchapter M. The ITAR consists of 11 parts, Parts 120 through 130 of Subchapter M, implementing the AECA in controlling the manufacture, export, and temporary import of certain controlled articles and technology from being transferred to objectionable persons, entities, and countries. Key terms, which we will discuss in greater depth in Part 2, include defense articles and defense services. Whether a proposed activity is captured by the ITAR will depend on whether it includes a defense article or a defense service. DDTC frequently updates the ITAR to reflect changes in the international political and security climate, as well as technological development in foreign policy. DDTC works closely with other agencies to interpret and administer the ITAR. 1. U.S. Customs and Border Protection, or CBP, to review defense industry registrations, performance of defense export and use checks, investigations, and civil penalties. 2. The intelligence community to review alleged diversions and unauthorized transfers. And 3. Justice Department and U.S. attorneys in criminal enforcement cases to provide pre-trial consultations, trial documentary preparation, and expert testimony. In addition, the Department of State is just one agency charged with safeguarding the national security and foreign policy interests of the United States through controlling the sale, export, and re-export of certain items. This world of regulatory control is known as U.S. Export Controls and is made up of several different agencies, each with their own set of rules, regulations, and policies. The other primary agencies that control exports and re-exports include the Department of Commerce, which has jurisdiction over commercial and so-called dual-use items, and the Treasury Department, that administers and enforces sanctions against countries, organizations, and individuals. In addition, the Justice Department's Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, or ATF, controls the permanent import of defense articles into the United States and also controls exports of some firearms and destructive devices pursuant to the National Firearms Act. At this point, it is important to note that nearly all firearms and ammunition, their parts and components, and corresponding technical data are classified as defense articles. Consequently, Manufacturing, export, import, and brokering activity involving these commodities are subject to the ITAR. Currently, the only exception to this blanket rule is shotguns with barrels 18 inches and over, and shotgun shells, which are both classified as dual-use items and therefore subject to the Commerce Department's Export Administration regulations. A word about export control reform. At the time we produced this video, the Obama administration continues with its ambitious objective of reforming U.S. export controls. This reform effort is a comprehensive overhaul of the regulations controlling U.S. exports, and to date has included substantial revisions to the list of items controlled by the Departments of State and Commerce. The result has been a removal of many articles from the Department of State's jurisdiction over to that of the Department of Commerce. To date, however, none of these reforms have included removal of firearms or ammunition from the ITAR, and we do not anticipate any changes in jurisdiction in the foreseeable future. Nevertheless, we strongly encourage the audience to watch the Federal Register for any changes in export control as it pertains to firearms. Thank you for watching this segment of our video training series. Viewers are encouraged to seek professional advice prior to assessment, implementation, or execution.